What is the most insensitive thing anyone's ever said to you? When I told my mother I finally had a girlfriend, her reply was pretty classic. I recommend you be very cautious of any girl that's interested in you. What do you really have to offer? Not much. Gee. Thanks mom. I guess the girl was really just after my kidneys? Yeah, thanks for those faulty genes, mom. Is this your way of getting out of helping us move? When I told my dad how angry I was at him for having an affair on my mom. I had a friend called to tell me she was pregnant. I told her congrats, that's great, etc. She asked how my pregnancy was going, and as I had just had a miscarriage that morning, I informed her of my heartbreak. She proceeded to then say, well, you didn't want your baby as much as I want mine. I'm glad it's you and not me having a miscarriage. I have yet to forgive her for it. That was 16 years ago. People used to tell me when I was a little kid that adopted kids aren't as loved by the parents that adopted them as the kids that were birthed by their actual parents. I laugh at that now, but at the time it hurt because I already had an internal struggle about being adopted. My mom died at the end of October. I have this piece of crap co-worker who comes in high off his butt all the time and doesn't do anything. The weekend before Thanksgiving. This kid is too high to function at work, so I'm basically running the front of the restaurant. He's blathering to me about nonsense, and if I don't respond he gets pissy. He says, I'm so excited to go home and see my mom. Are you gonna go see your mom? Oh, wait, and then laughs. I was freaking heartbroken. Frick you, Paul. Frick Paul, I'll fight him. My brother had passed away when I was in 7th grade after not going to school for 2 weeks. My parents decided it was time for me to try to get through school again as to not fall too far behind. My first day back, during my 3rd class of the day, some girls started to bully me, and after getting the courage to say something back, a girl yelled at me. Well, at least my brother didn't die. I freaking lost it and ran away from the school crying. God, this one just broke my heart. It pains me that no one stood up. That people actually bullied her. I hope that there are better 7th graders in this world. When I was in my late teens, I had severe depression, which culminated one night in a huge fight with my mother and almost taking a ton of pills. When breaking down and telling her I needed help, she cried and said people will think I'm a bad mother. Things good mothers don't say for $1,000, Alex. I was once rooming with someone who was very proud of how hard they worked. One day, they remarked about how lazy I was because I didn't do anything all day, which of course was true, except for the 3 days a week I went in to get chemo treatments at a cancer center. Other than that, though, yeah, I just laid around all day. God, surviving is so frickin' lazy. My childhood friend married and had a baby. Both her and her husband didn't have any siblings, and she unfortunately suffers from PCOS, making it difficult to conceive and carry a baby to full term. They had a beautiful baby girl and were amazing parents. She died in a tragic, unavoidable accident, leaving both of them devastated. She was 4.5 when she died. The funeral was horrible. No one should have to make coffins that small. People shuffled up and offered words of condolence. An aunt, known for being really horrible and blunt, came up and said quite loudly, well, you can just have another one, can't you? And if it's a girl, you can just call it deceased daughter's name. Silence took over the whole room and lasted for about 6 seconds before the poor mother just dropped to her knees, sobbing. I hope that aunt was shunned from the family. Last winter, my grandmother passed away over the weekend. On Monday, I emailed my boss asking for Friday off so that I could attend her funeral. He wrote back, that's fine. A little more notice next time. I'm pretty sure he just saw time off and Friday and didn't bother reading the rest of the email, but it still hurt. I've talked about it in a past thread, but the first day I was back at work after my daughter died, I made a stupid mistake. My annoyed co-worker said, dang, it's a good thing we got your genes out of the gene pool. Stop crying over her. Millions of people die of cancer every day. Do you cry for them as well? No? So shut the frick up. What do you want me to do about it? The night I told my boyfriend that my best friend passed away after battling cancer for 3 years. Ex-boyfriend, I hope. Nowhere near as bad as some of the others on here, but I'm a nurse. A patient's family member once said to me, what? So you weren't smart enough to get into med school? Is that why you're just a nurse? Well, obviously they said that because they have not had enough education to know the kind of grades that a nurse needs. Please tell me at least that this person was either really old or really young. After my longed for pregnancy ended in a miscarriage, my friend said that she was glad I lost the baby, as now I could go out drinking with her again. Whoa. I had a philosophy professor who was also my advisor, and she knew I was struggling with school and caring for my sick parents. I needed guidance, clearly, as I wanted to go to grad school. She told me once, I won't write you a letter of recommendation for school, but I'll gladly write you one if you want to go bag groceries. What in butthole? So how's the new baby? Said by the OB-GYN at my 3-week follow-up after the emergency C-section to deliver my stillborn child. She was horrified, abjectly apologetic. Said she'd make sure there were notes all over my file so nothing like that would happen again. 6-week follow-up. Same doctor while staring at my file. So how's the new baby doing? Almost 6 weeks old, right? Wrong. 6-month follow-up. I am so sorry for your loss. That is absolutely abhorrent behavior from a doctor. I had a girlfriend who would sometimes say, alright, I'm going out with the girls. Hopefully I find someone better than you. She was semi-joking, I think, but yeah, that didn't work out. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. You look great. Thanks, mum. I had just told you about my eating disorder, but yeah, at least I was skinny. This is so unsettling. I'm sorry. Why are you upset? It's not like the kid had been born yet. Ex-friend said this to me after finding out that my then-so had miscarried 6 months into the pregnancy. Life goes on. Said by one of the partners in my company regarding my daughter's suicide. He was concerned because I was taking 2 hours off every other week for therapy. Time that I was using vacation time for, so the company technically didn't lose anything. Fortunately, I had the support of other partners and they confirmed for me that what he said wasn't indicative of the company's feelings. Jesus, what an butthole. So sorry for your lose. I can't believe they let trash like you into that university, said to me by my racist neighbor across the street when she found out I got into a top 10 engineering school. What the frick? You should start drinking again. Everyone loves drunk you. My sister, knowing I was an alcoholic who had quit drinking. My husband's family does this crap to him, makes me seethe with anger. Not the worst one in my life, but one that still burns me is the day after my grandma died when I was in the 5th grade. I told my butthole math teacher that I didn't have my homework because I spent the whole night crying and dealing with the news, and he interrupted me saying, yeah, I know, your father emailed me, but that's not an excuse to not have your homework done. The whole class was silent listening to him lecturing me on how homework is more important than losing a family member. I remember having to restrain myself from punching him right in his crappy little face. That's horrible. I'm sorry that happened. I had just graduated with my degree and was feeling really excited about the future. I didn't know something that my dad felt a graduate should know, so he said, you know, I'm starting to think you're a waste of space like your friends. That crap cut deep. Don't let it cut deep. Just say, frick off. It makes you feel better and it lets them know you just don't give a crap about them. But don't say that if it was a short time argument and you guys are already over it. You're a freaking crazy piece of crap. I wish you'd die. While I was suicidal and in therapy, which she was aware of. You're still here? That fetus died hours ago. Obstetrician at San Bernardino Hospital, San Bernardino, 1972. After giving birth, baby was taken, and I was wheeled off to storage closet turned hospital room. Daughter died 12 hours later, but no one thought to tell me. Drugged, groggy, wasn't in a real hospital room. He had forgotten, then said he could have saved her, but it wasn't worth his time or money. Have another. My grandfather raised me, and when he died, I was obviously devastated. Someone told me I needed to stop being sad. When I explained why I was sad, they said, yeah, I know, but that was like 2 weeks ago. It's obvious that person had never suffered a loss like that and spoke from insulting ignorance. They'll understand the day it finally happens to them. I'm sorry for your loss. I liked you better when you were depressed. You were less spastic. A friend in high school after I'd started antidepressants and no longer wanted to die all the time. When I was about 12, I was out on a boat with family friends and a girl with whom I'd known since birth. As we were casting off, I asked if she could help. She just sat there. I sarcastically said, "Thanks for your help." Her reply was, "At least my father is still alive. My father died 5 days before my 8th birthday." Took everything I had to not throw her out of the boat. You look like a school shooter first day of high school. At the end of the year I was given a reward with the caption "most likely to shoot up a school." How do you feel for giving your kids autism? From an anti-vaxxer after my 3rd kid was diagnosed. Let's just say that all the rage I had at the universe came spewing out verbally at her. She doubtfully will be asking that question again. LOL. I would rather have a living, breathing child with autism than one suffocating to death in my arms due to measles. Kid my senior year of high school called me N sucker after finding out I was dating a black girl. Rural America. When I first got into modeling I was really excited about it. I had always considered myself awkward and ugly, and getting some modeling gigs was excellent evidence that I had grown into myself. More importantly, I loved it. So much fun to create a story with your pose and facial expression while other people complete the story with props and makeup. So I go to my best friend to share the excitement, and all she had to say is, "I'm full of myself and really I just look like I'm dying." It was pretty soul crushing. Those are words of jealousy, for sure. My friend went missing last year. I mentioned it to my manager, and she said, "Wow, let me know when they find her dead in a ditch." Okay. Amazing how knowing when to cut off your sentence makes the difference between being seen as supporting and being seen as a rotten human being. Your manager missed the mark by 5 words. Said to me by a former friend with whom I was discussing psychology, in front of my bipolar husband, "We should just let depressed people all kill themselves." Depression is funny, like somebody floating above you trying to shove your face into the ground. It's not even you, it's like a separate thing infecting your mind. You can feel it physically. Oh, look at that gun. I wonder what it feels like. It's like looking at life through blurry glass. It makes you feel crazy. But I agree, freaking get it over with. LOL. I went to happy hour and my friend ran into someone she used to work with. He joined our group and at some point in the night we started talking about how we tend to pick ourselves apart when we look in the mirror, but other people view us as a whole and don't notice all those things we are self-conscious about. In what he thought was an attempt to emphasize this point, he looked at me and said something like, "I can pick you apart and probably tell you everything you're self-conscious about. You've got a little muffin top, you've got freckles, you've got a big forehead, but nobody sees it when they look at you. Every one of those things is something I'm self-conscious about." Incidentally, pointing them out was a terrible way to prove nobody notices them. Later, I told this story to my boyfriend, who I had met online. He responded, "You know, it's funny you should mention that. The forehead thing is the one thing I was surprised by when I saw you in person that I didn't expect from your pictures. That relationship did not last long. Just embrace it. It's a 5-head. But it's your 5-head. I am a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. I have PTSD and a number of mental health issues. I had a job at a restaurant when I got out, and the chef was in butthole with no tact. One day, when I was in the middle of cooking, I worked in the front, kind of like diner style. The chef starts talking to me, asking me about my time in the service, right in front of all the customers and servers. He asked, "Did you ever see anybody die?" "Yeah. My sister had a stillborn son back in May of 2015. They discharged her from the hospital that night. I drove her home. I asked her if she was hungry and wanted anything in particular. She said a chocolate shake from Dennis, where we both worked together and had actually both left in the middle of our shifts that day. Her BC, she was in labor. Me to go be with her as we're very close. We get there. All of our co-workers know what happened, so they're trying to be consoling. One of our mutual best friends who also works there says, "I am tired. Can you all come back in so I can leave?" I never brought it up to her, but I was so taken back that she actually asked us to come back into work after my sister just lost her freaking baby. After swallowing half a bottle of Tylenol when I was 16, my grandmother, whom raised me, walked into the room where I was and said, "I knew you were going to do something like this. Did you at least finish your homework?" I won a prestigious National Science Foundation fellowship, and my professor says, "Well, we knew you'd get it. You're a girl after all." Huh. When I was in high school we were really poor. My mom was a single mom, and I only had one pair of jeans that I wore every day. The jeans had 2 tiny holes from getting caught while climbing a chain link fence. One day in drama, our teacher paired us up with random people to do mini plays. I got partnered with this really cute guy, not a really popular snotty guy, but a really nice regular guy who was friends with everyone. When we sat down to work on the play, he says to me, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Why do you wear the same pair of pants to school every day?" In total red-faced devastation, I told him because it's the only pair of pants that I own. The look on his face was awful, like reality was crumbling right in front of his eyes. I could tell that he felt horrible for asking, and I felt horrible for stupidly believing that maybe nobody noticed that I was wearing the same pair of jeans every day. When I was writing this, I teared up, even though it was literally 30 years ago. My 12 and 16-year-old boys saw me getting teary and we had a little conversation about being careful about what you say to people. Then my 12-year started hugging me and crying, which made me cry harder. But then we thought about that poor boy who to this day probably feels horrible for what he said. So then we all started laughing. Hey, insensitive boy from Crescent Heights High, 1983, I forgive you. There are a few that come to mind. A couple from my first boyfriend. Are you freaking retarded and stop trying to be pretty? And this lovely little convo I once had with my mom, ranting about how I need to find a boyfriend who fits in with the family. Me, "Mom, don't you think maybe my happiness is more important than whether or not he fits in?" Mom, number. Had the worst diarrhea ever for 3 days. Super dehydrated and half dead feeling. Finally went to the clinic and explained my situation. The desk woman laughed when I said I had been pooping for 3 days without end. Then told me they can't treat me and sent me away. Ended up in the hospital for 3 days with nasty food poisoning. Bonus story, I was 30 when this happened. I was so upset and miserable that I called my mom in tears. Super mom called that woman directly and gave her an earful. Thanks mom XD. I had just separated from an abusive relationship and during said relationship I had gained some weight because of depression and such. Female size 10 when I was previously around a 4. So I mean, not freaking huge or anything. My grandmother told me my husband had made you fat so no one else would want you and you have to lose weight if you want anyone to ever love you. Frick you, grandma. My grandmother told my parents, in front of me, that I was a fat piggy and needed to be on a diet. I was 4. When we told my wife's parents that she was pregnant, her dad said, "I guess you're the father." I left skid marks on my tongue on that one. Super blunt uncle who I hadn't seen in years. When I walk up and say hi, "Well, looks like you don't ever miss a meal." I'd put on some weight. Sure, but frick. According to Nicki Minaj, being able to tell you ain't missing no meals is a high compliment. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.